genocide in Gaza. In Los Angeles, ICE raids, the No Kings demonstrations across the States and here in the UK, the admission that our government still hasn't got to grips with child sexual exploitation in the form of grooming gangs. It's a lot to get angry about. And anger is the theme of the next couple of weeks' talks. Normally, when Zen deals with anger, or Buddhism generally, we send it back to the self. You're only getting angry because your ego has been challenged, your sense of self has been challenged. Forget the self, your anger will subside. And yeah, it's kind of true and not really. Anger seemed like a very appropriate thing to deal with after the last pair of talks where we're talking about the general principles of ordinary mind practice and how the practice is rooted in just sitting in zazen and in awareness. Just becoming aware. My thoughts, emotions, bodily experience, and the connection between this and anger. So an ordinary mind approach to anger. Now, dealing with anger is something that Joko was actually quite celebrated for, helping her students work with anger. And this is no less true of my teacher Barry. In fact, other Zen teachers have often sent their own students. This student is so angry, just can't cope with their anger, to him in an attempt to help them work through. And of course, it's always more complicated than that, but you know, we work with anger. So how do we work with anger? Are we trying to get rid of it? We're trying to just accept it. What are we doing? There's a nice little Joko quote actually from Nothing Special. When anger arises, she says, much of traditional Zen practice would have us blot out the anger and concentrate on something, such as the breath. Though we push the anger aside, it will return whenever we're criticised or threatened in some way. In contrast, our practice, ordinary mind practice, is to become the anger itself, to experience it fully, without separation or rejection. No separation. It's part of what I'm always banging on about. Become the anger itself. Experience it fully. What on earth do we mean by that? How do I become my anger? And what's the effect of that? So, that's the question. That's what we're going to be talking around a little bit. In this sense, without getting fancy, what is anger anyway? It's a bodily reaction. It's that sense of need, like so many of our core emotions, need to act, need to do something, need to move, need to respond, need to react now. And it shows up in our breath. We might tighten or we might gasp. It shows up in our heart. Heart rate will probably increase. Blood pressure will probably increase. Our hormonal balance will change. We'll start feeling tense. We'll be poised, ready, fight or flight. Of course, anger is obviously much nearer fight than flight. It's a response, it's a threat. If I can say, and I've talked about this with Barry, and it's very definitely of this opinion, that finally anger is always a response to our fear. And sometimes that's what we experience as a direct threat, sometimes much more indirect. That's when it gets a bit more complicated. So we fear, have this fear response, and, we're not actually good with fear, are we? As soon as it transforms into anger, anger is telling me to do something. Fear, really, all I can do is head for the hills. Anger, do something. Shout. Lash out. Do something now. And so what do? What's the basis of our zazen? Not moving. It's that simple. And the basis of ordinary mind is kind of the most mind-bendingly simple thing you can ever imagine. It's don't move. What happens if I feel that need and I don't move? Well, I become aware of the resistance. I become aware of my life being, in this moment, not as I would wish it to be. Suffering. I actually begin to experience my suffering. If I shout at you, already I'm lost. Already I'm not experiencing my anger. If I hit you, I'm connecting with that physical motion. I'm there. I'm focused on you. I'm not experiencing my anger. Now, my other option is tell myself a story. And, we're all really good at telling ourselves the self-justifying, self-righteous story. It is so annoying. You are so annoying. This is such a ridiculous... And we don't do that either. So we just, and we can do it kind of technique style, thinking the thought that I'm angry, thinking I'm annoyed about so-and-so. Or we can just go, back to the body. What am I actually experiencing in this moment? What actually is this anger? Well, it's this tension, my elevated heart rate, my funny breathing, the emotion that I want to strangle somebody. That's what my anger is. And what do I do with it? And what we always do, we simply experience it and hold it. Not push it away. Not say bad anger. Not say this is not me. Not say I should be. Not say I'm bad for feeling angry. But just simply experience it. Hold it. Hold my anger. Make a place for it. Acknowledge it as part of me. But be aware of my tendency to turn it into a story, a narrative. And certainly restraint. And Joko was obsessed with sit still, don't move. And a lot of the time that was, Joko, I've got this crippling pain in my knee. Don't move. Because it's that experience resistance as resistance. Now, those of you who've been with us on Sesshin know, we don't do that. But it's still, the principle is 100% sound. We just stay with. Don't move. And that's it. But why do we feel threatened? Why do we feel fear? I'm going to suggest, and you may disagree, think it through, feel it through, experience your anger, that this doesn't tend to be about physical threat. This fear tends to be around personal threat, psychological threat, identity threat. So to that extent, kind of does come back to the self, or what we'll call the self, sense of me. Not threat to my body so much as threat to me. In fact, I'd go further. I'd say in terms of the way that I've been talking about relationship, recognition, actually, yeah, you're there and you're a separate person, a different person from me. But you like me in being a person. You've got hopes, fears, you're vulnerable. Oh, hi. I'm here. Yeah, hi. And the possibility of relationship that follows from that, whether it's exchanging a smile with somebody in the street or living with them for 50 years. Same principle. It's when that is broken, we feel that that's been broken, denied. What? What have I done? What's wrong? What's happening here? And that can be in so many different ways. It's not necessarily direct. It's not even necessarily about me in that sense. Because our sense of relationship in general relies absolutely on this sharing of a set of ideas, a set of responses that, most of the time we couldn't even name, most of the time we're not aware of, but they're there. Sense of fairness, sense of justice, a sense of what's expected, a sense of what will be offered. It's what the analyst Jessica Benjamin, in the way she talks about relationship, calls about the third. It's not my ideas, it's not my expectation, so it's not yours. It's something we build, something we find together. So really, if relationship is always about connection, a joining, anger is always about this sense that things have been broken. And because they're broken, I'm going to pull back further. I'm going to get angry. I'm not going to separate off from you entirely, because otherwise I'd just walk off. But I feel the insult, the implicit shaming of me calls for some response. This is not reasonable. This is not okay. This is not fair. And that applies in infinite number of ways. And then the question is what we do with this. And I'll suggest that we can either allow this anger to be simply to sit as separation, or we can allow it to, or encourage it to shift back into connection, and a different kind of connection, a different level of connection. Let's see if we can make this make sense. This isn't a hypothetical, this is a deep source of shame for myself. Children are all grown up and leading wonderful lives now. When they were small, when they were tiny, and say you're at the dinner table, I can think of a specific instance, but I'm aware of this, they're being a bit antsy, or I'll say cheeky, but it's not like that, but just not showing me the respect due to a parent, not showing me the response due to an adult, an elder. And, feeling angry as a result. This kind of reflects, come on, I'm the grown-up here, I deserve better than this. Not being nasty, but just feeling this sense of withdrawal and frustration. And how can you be like this? Ridiculous. What's that to do with? Well, that's to do with my sense of our relationship, but sense that's not based on me and you in our reality. It's based on my ideas about what a parent is and what an adult is and how a child should be in relation to a parent. So we're into the world of identities, that kind of misidentification. No, it's like this. That's kind of relationship, but not actual relationship in the sense that I'm talking about. It's not a real meeting. It's I'll sit over here and you sit over there and we'll have, that kind of relationship. So that's identity. Or let's think of a very different example. Say I'm out driving and come to a roundabout, and just, yeah, okay, I've moved in, and somebody honks you, As far as they're concerned, you've cut in on them. Why are they doing that? Well, because in however a smaller measure, they're angry. They feel disrespected. They feel that you've, well, what, really? Shamed them for, not being able to do what they want to do, but certainly not paid sufficient attention to the fact that they were there. And again, this slides into more complex things, real, doesn't it? If it's really bad driving, you shouldn't be on the road, whatever. But again, there's so much identity there, so much an image of, I'm here in my company car or whatever. You should respect that. I'm here. I'm making a statement about myself in the world, and you should respect that. And so if you get honked, you feel angry because, in a sense, you're being shamed. You shouldn't do that. It's bad. No, I'm a good driver. And we see the thing. And it's so much about identity, because otherwise we just slide past each other and that wouldn't be an issue. I had to brake. Oh, calamity. Or, I could have managed that better. Oh, calamity. Well, no. So identity, it's where we're misidentifying as puffed up self, or thinking this person clearly has contempt for me. Well, no, they just weren't really paying attention the way they should have been. And then that segs slowly and infinitely into a very different kind of example that a person we often go to for thoughts about emotion and the precepts and that sort of thing. An example Diane Rossetto gives of a different kind of response to anger. The Road Safety Foundation, non-profit probably in the States, isn't it? Set up in response by mothers whose children had been killed on the road by drunk drivers, and setting that up as an educational, going into schools, talking to people in rehab or whatever, just, hey, what do we do about this? How do we change this? How do we do something different? And she's saying that, well, that's just getting it out there. That's transforming anger into something else, moving on. And actually, I think that's completely unreasonable, because do you really move on from your child being killed on the road? I'm fortunate that hasn't happened to me, but I assume it's much more likely that it lasts a lifetime, and you just have to keep coming back and revisiting that. But what's happening there is using and transforming that anger into connection, not allowing it to be simple separation. The simple separation will be, well, I'm going to hunt down the guy and I'm going to kill him. No. Turning it into connection. How do we build out of this? How do we build a less separate world out of this anger in response to this calamity? So we can use anger and just allow it to separate us off from the world. Or we can use it to connect differently. And that's a dramatic example, but so many infinite ways. When I become aware of my anger, when I restrain, and that's a good word, restraint. Joko says so much of our practice is about restraint. When I've learnt, sitting in zazen, not to move. When I've learned, when my thoughts get carried off, to bring them back. When I've learned to stay with this experience of this body, this tension, this feeling in my heart, this accompanying emotion, that thought that always comes up here. When I don't feel the need to immediately, reactively act. When I can hold this, then connection becomes possible. And that restraint is what we practice every day in our zazen. Not about anger specifically, but just about whatever. My boredom. The fact there's nothing happening. Not being able to stop thinking about what I'm having for dinner. Whatever it is. Restraint. Restraint. Return. Stay still. Return to the body. And that's all really our practice with anger is, but it allows us the space for this emotion to transform into connection. Perhaps we orient ourselves in that direction, but we don't say bad anger, we don't push it aside, we don't say how ridiculous, we don't say I shouldn't be feeling this. We allow it, we give it space. As Joko says, we become our anger, we fully experience it, but not by acting it out, not by allowing the thoughts to circle, but simply by staying with the experience. So to bring this back to where I started with, stuff out in the world that isn't directly about myself. And I say this because, to be honest, most of the stuff, pretty much all the stuff that really I feel anger about, and I do feel anger, isn't directly connected with me. It's much more connected with what seems like the insanity of the world. Things could be so different. We could collectively do things so differently. And yet, for an infinite number of reasons, we collectively choose not to. So where's the time with that? Actually, I think this is true of most of us some of the time, and for some of us it's the real issue. Not, oh, I feel threatened, but no, this is not right. So how is that to do with me? Well, I think this is where we come back to Benjamin's idea of the third. It really is to do with the fact that my deeper sense of self is really bound up with this sense of fairness, justice, how things should be. And I don't mean at the level of purely identity, oh yeah, I'm a really right-thinking guy, I'm absolutely woke, or whatever cliche we want to, use to disrespect that very genuine concern that people have for not themselves, for what's going on in the world. It really is. This is the nature of recognition, relationship. I recognize you, and I recognize the suffering of those people, the vulnerability of all those people, and that others disrespect it. That is not a good thing. That others disrespect it is bad, some cases appalling. So how do I respond? Do I get angry? Do I act out that anger? Of course, Thich Nhat Hanh said, it's not enough to want peace. And he was talking about the Vietnam War here, the war that was destroying his own country as America dropped unbelievable quantities of explosive lead, unbelievable quantities of mines, defoliated entire forests, rounded up, translocated entire populations. It's not enough to want peace. You have to be peace. You have to practice peace. And that's the same lesson that we learn from the American Civil Rights Movement, that opposition is not enough. It has to be opposition with the possibility of connection, not losing sight But as Dr. King said, we are one people. That's what makes the difference. But that's not easy. And there's no magic formula. And I don't know how we do that. But practicing restraint is the first part, whether that's me and you, or me and the whole world, me and the injustice of the world. And then, of course, there is anger within all our relationships, and our closest, most intimate relationships included. That may be big stuff, often it's total trivia, but again, there's so much to simply observe, become aware of, and work with. Every instance is, in that sense, a wake-up call. Is this about some identity-bound notion of, well, me and what I deserve and my requirements of the situation? Or is it about something deeper? Is it about the nature of this relationship, me and you? Can we tell the difference? Can we respond, let our anger find a way to become connection, not act it out, not let the thoughts circulate, but to face and open towards, as we always say, openness and possibility. Not knowing. How will this turn out? Where can we together go? What do we do with this situation? Whenever anger becomes about simply my identity, this sense of who I am, in a sense it involves denying our vulnerability. And if I'm othering, if I'm saying you're bad people, whether you're bad people because you want to come and find a life in my country, or even you're bad people because please stop hitting that guy, it's still denying our mutual vulnerability. We're both feeling beings. Can we find a way of connecting that acknowledges the vulnerability of both of us? That's when we have recognition. That's when we have the possibility of relationship. Now, sometimes that's easy, kiss and make up. Sometimes, when the bombing doesn't stop, when the roundups don't stop, when harm is still being done, how do we find it then? That's our life.